happens when you tell people that you're traveling alone. I know this from personal experience. I was planning to take a road trip down the Pacific Coast Highway a couple months ago, and I was telling all my friends about it, and there's so much excitement. They ask all these questions of where are you exactly going, and how long are you staying, and what are you gonna do when you're there? And then they ask, who are you going with? And I say, no one. And then it's like the conversation stops. They need to clarify that I said what I just said before we can actually move on. And they say, you're not going with anyone? And I say, no. And they say, you're going alone? And I say, yeah. And they say, you're not meeting up with somebody there? And I say, no. I can't really tell whether they are confused or whether it almost seems like they feel bad for me for some reason. And what I found is there's two main things that are behind that concern that they have about traveling alone. So one is that they're concerned for my safety. And I get it. I'm a white girl in my 20s and I'm traveling alone, yeah. But I also travel everywhere on my own, even around my own neighborhood. But the second thing is what I think the real concern is that people have. They're concerned that, won't I be lonely? I get it. If they've never traveled alone, they might not understand what it's actually like. And in their minds, who knows? Maybe they envision that there's some way that I am traveling and for days at a time, I'm not meeting or coming into contact or speaking with another human being until I come back home. And if that was the case, yeah, it would be pretty lonely. But that's never the case for me. I make more connections when I travel alone than when I'm with anybody else. So you can check the link in my bio. I wrote 50 connections that I had made on that trip. But I just want to go through a couple of them with you so you get an idea of what I'm talking about. At Big Sur, there was a gift shop, and the lady at the gift shop happened to have been from my same town. She lived just 20 minutes away from me. And it was funny, she told me the story of how she was just looking for a job to volunteer in the summer, one of the national parks, and Big Sur called her. And the thing is, now she has a boyfriend there in California and she doesn't know if she wants to come back. There were those fisher folk that I met down at Pfeiffer Beach who were digging for worms to use as bait, and they showed me how they did it and how it worked. And one man had a 10-year-old daughter who laughed at me when I screamed as I was holding one of the worms, and how she tried to tell me it's not gonna hurt me. She was obviously much braver than I was. There was that woman that I met from San Francisco off one of those online apps, and I realized how we both had in common that super religious upbringing that we shared, and I was able to see how she too was finding her way out of it as a queer woman to be able to accept herself. There was the guy at the hotel in Monterey who was checking me in who didn't charge me the $50 deposit. And when I asked him why he didn't, he said it was because I looked trustworthy. And I remember wondering to myself in that moment if he would have the same impression of me if I was any other race or any other gender. There was that day that I was in Monterey doing some sightseeing, and there was the lady selling jewelry at the stand outside who told me how much she loved her whale watching trip and how much she suggested that I take advantage of it while I was here. I remember when I was leaving that parking lot in Monterey, there was that elderly couple, the ones who couldn't figure out how to use the parking machine to pay for their parking, and they were so stressed out until I was able to show them how to do it, and they were so grateful. When I got down to Los Angeles, there was a homeless man that was playing drums in the corner. And we didn't speak a word to each other, but in that moment, when you're playing drums, nothing else exists. You're just in the zone, and I could relate with him on that. And this was maybe my favorite moment. There was one night, sunset was coming down, I was at Venice Beach at the skate park, and I was there watching the skaters in the bowl do all these tricks with a whole bunch of other people all gathered around. And the sun was setting, and eventually the sun set and they couldn't see anymore. And they were gonna stop skating. And I pulled out my phone and I turned on my flashlight and I held it up right in front of me so they could see the bowl that they were skating in right in front of me. And just a few moments later, everyone else around the whole park did the same, and we all lit up the park so these skaters could keep skating and so we could keep watching. And it was such a magical moment of we were all in this together. It was so great. Anyway, lonely is probably the last thing that I felt on that trip. And that is the funny thing that happens when you travel alone. Thanks.